Mancave, this is Bob for the Bob's N-Scale Mancave, and we are going to be talking about putting up your mainline shelves. I'm upgrading my particular Mancave railroad shelf system right now. I decided I was going to go away from the typical 1x6, which is actually 3/4 inch by 5.5 inch boards, because they tend to warp over time, or tend to warp just leaning up against a wall in the garage. You get that temperature changes and moisture and everything else, and things start to warp, and it's hard to work with after if you don't work with it right away when you get it home from the lumber store. I chose to go with a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. It's sanded plywood. It's on the more expensive side. It is regular plywood. I didn't go with the hardwoods like oak and mahogany and cherry and all that stuff. Just regular 3/4 inch plywood. Now it's sanded, so it's nice and smooth. I got all the finishing done on this side. I can finish it some more, stain it probably later, which is probably what I'm going to do later. And then I basically follow my plan. How wide do I want my shelf? And in this case, it's anywhere between 5.5 inches to 7.5 inches, depending on where it is in the room. What I'm going to show you today is how to set up your table saw so you can cut an overlapping joint between the sections of your layout. Basically, if this is the part that's sitting right here, I've got a couple pieces of foam attached here. This piece I had to modify and cut off because it was too long. And then you just put the other shelf right up on top of it. Basically, you have one of these cut just like that, lay on top, and they join together. So I'm going to show you how I kind of cut these out on the table saw. It takes a little bit of skill sometimes because every table saw is a little different, and even though you measure something, it doesn't actually cut the same depth. I don't have a great table saw, I guess. I have an affordable table saw, but you can still do what you need to do with whatever tools you have available. Okay, we're going to figure out how high to make our saw blade. Well, we got to know how thick the plywood is first, or the wood you're working with. And in this case, this is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. So I know I need to make it overlapping, so I want to make it half of 3/4 inch. An easy way to do that is you can look at the 1/8 markings on this ruler, or the 1/16, however you want to do it. But count up how many 1/8 of an inch, for instance, on this side is 3/4 inch, and it happens to be 6/8 of an inch. So half of 6 is 3. So I need to mark it off at 3/8 of an inch. So what I did here is I measured down 3/8 of an inch from this edge, so I know how high this bar will be. I make it level. Take it, make sure I have a blade at the highest point, and then just lay it down on top. Raise and lower your blade as needed to make sure that this thing is not, rocking back and forth like this. Make sure it's nice and level. And you can feel that as the blade hits the guide here. So once you figure that out, you got to figure out how deep you want to cut into this wood. And in this case, this is 1 inch deep. You can make it 3/4 inch. I chose to go with 1 inch. Gave me a little bit more room to work with. And since this is a nice thick 3/8 inch board here, it's going to hold up pretty nicely. So I just take your measuring tape. It's an easy way. You can either use the T-square if you want, or this case is probably a little bit easier to use a tape measure. But put it in there against that tooth and adjust as needed. And we'll put it right there at about 1 inch. And where do you measure? Well, you want to measure on this side of the blade, not this side of the blade when you're cutting. So when you measure, make sure you're measuring to the outside of the tooth, because that'll be the widest point that will cut into the wood right here. Okay, so once you have that set, all you got to do is take your piece of wood that you're working with and set it up along the side, turn it on, start cutting that piece of wood. Keep it all the way flush against the guide, and once you do that first cut, you can check your work, make sure it's right. I would probably practice on a piece of scrap wood like this one or something like that to see if you get the right depth and everything else you're looking for. But once you get that first cut, you just pull it back a little bit and make another cut through here. Make another cut through here, and so forth and so forth. Just keep on cutting it. Now you could use a dado bit, and a lot of you are probably going, well, why don't you use a dado bit? It's like, well, I have one, and it's just a pain in the butt to set up. And I wasn't making that many cuts today. So this is a quick and easy way to do it without a dado bit. Once you make a bunch of little cuts, a lot of pieces will fly off. You can start going in from the side. Like in this case, just trim off all those little tiny pieces and going back and forth till you cut all that extra wood out of the way. And it usually ends up pretty smooth. You may have some little ripples in here because you know where you're hitting the blade, but you can keep going back and forth and it gets all those high marks off, and it'll turn out pretty well. And you can also take a finishing sander and sand that down. So let's go take a look at how it looks actually put together on the layout. Okay, this is the new corner piece I made out of a 2 foot by 2 foot piece. As you can see, I had some track up there, and I cut some of it off and made it overlap. And as you can see, it overlaps just perfectly. So I also cut some notches in the back up there for the shelving brackets, and the board fits in there pretty snugly. And I cut it on the other side as well, and that also overlaps there. So as you can see, I got boards all the way around. And this one over here is a longer piece cut from 2 foot by 8 foot section. So I cut the corner piece out and down to about right in there. That one obviously does not sit as flush as it should, but I can rework some of that as well, because I got to take out this section board anyway to finish hooking up the helix exit and entrance to the main line. And so then I also have... Okay, we're going up into the helix. As you can see, I have this board put in here, and it's overlapped on these two boards here. And also put some brackets on top of the board in here to kind of hold it up in the corner, so that I didn't have to get any of those other under the shelf brackets in there. A little bit hard to work around this helix. As you can see, the helix is kind of collapsed down, so it's going to go up almost up to there when it gets around to that point, and it's going to continue from here and go to the outside of the helix on the outside of these braces, run around the outside and connect up over here on this board. I'm going to have to cut a notch in this side of it so that I can put a 3/8 inch piece of plywood down in there. So My little instruction there on how to set that up will come in really handy when I get down to that point. So I just showed you how to set up your saw, cut your boards so that they overlap when you're making your shelving, and where to put the brackets and so forth. So it's really easy once you get down to it, but I would practice on some scrap pieces of wood to make sure you get your cuts just right. I wish there was something else to say. Oh, yeah, I have found out some interesting news about James Wright from JLW 2000. We have lunch every once in a while, and we are friends. So the other day he was telling me that he has this thing coming out that is going to be big for his channel. And I'm like, really? Well, what is it? And he goes, I can't tell you, Bob. I can't. The paperwork isn't signed. It isn't a done deal yet, but it's in the works. But, you know, it's one of those things that I really can't say because it would be insider trading and stuff, or insider information. I really can't tell you that because you could take advantage of it or something. Like, oh, wow, okay, that sounds really big. You know, so, okay. So I just want to let you know that I've got something big coming up too. I'm working on some new things with this one particular group of people, I think, or entity. I can't really say because it isn't done deal yet, and I want to save the surprise for when it actually happens. So once I know for sure I'm actually going to do this, I don't want to tell people like yourselves that this is going to happen and then bust your bubble saying, well, the deal fell through and I can't do it. You know, that would stink. You know, then I have to take this video down and edit it and put it back up without all this nonsense in it. So, it's going to be huge. James's surprise is going to be huge. That's what he told me anyway. He kind of sounded like Donald Trump, but bald. But I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be pretty big. It's a big change. So, I've got some big things coming up here too, and I'm just going to leave it at that. So, if you like what you saw here, guys, Mancavians, man-girls, click up here and subscribe. Or click on my Facebook page link down below to follow me there, or my Google Plus, or my Twitter account. That's all I'm really worried about. I got enough things to worry about. So if you like what you saw, click on those things. And as always, Mancavians, happy model railroading. Stay off the tracks.